Well, as we can see from right around the world at the moment, there are some pretty disturbing circumstances with regards to the coronavirus. Our thoughts are particularly with those people in the UK, with more than 900 people dying overnight from the coronavirus. In South Australia, of course, we are enjoying an enviable position because of the hard work of the people of South Australia to keep the coronavirus at bay. We want to continue that into the future. This morning we have received advice that would suggest that we need to strengthen our border restrictions with New South Wales, and I'll go through those in a moment. From day one, we have listened to the health experts and we have acted promptly to keep the people of South Australia safe and to keep our economy strong, and we will continue to do this into the future. This methodology has served our state well, and it will continue. So as of midnight tonight, in fact 1 minute past midnight tonight, we will be putting a hard border back in place for New South Wales. This will have very few exceptions. Number one, if somebody is a returning resident of South Australia, if somebody is permanently relocating to South Australia, or those classes of essential traveller which we have documented in our directions. But apart from that, as of 1 minute past midnight tonight, we will be putting a hard border back in place with New South Wales. Only South Australians returning, people relocating permanently, or essential workers will be exempt from this arrangement, and they will still need to, for the South Australians returning or those people relocating, need to do 14 days of mandatory self-isolation. Well, the other exemption from this situation is with regards to the cross-border communities, and we will be putting a buffer zone in of 100 kilometres. And I know this will be of a great relief to people who are living in Broken Hill, but we will be putting in a buffer arrangement so that will have the effect of both Wentworth and Broken Hill being exempt from these new tougher border restrictions. We're also going to be putting some transit allowances in place, because there are people who are travelling through New South Wales who will not be stopping in New South Wales, and I'll ask the Police Commissioner in a few moments' time to run through how that transit arrangement exemption essentially will work. With regards to Victoria, obviously there are a few new cases in Victoria which have been reported over the last 48 hours. We have an excellent flow of data from Victoria over to us here in South Australia. We'll continue to monitor it, but at this stage there are no changes whatsoever to the arrangements with Victoria with regards to our border with Victoria, or who can come in or go out from Victoria. So no changes there, but we're obviously going to continue to monitor that very closely. I'll now hand over to the Police Commissioner.
Thank you, Premier. So just to reiterate, a hard border arrangement is coming into effect as of midnight, which is actually 1 minute past midnight on the 1st of January 2021. That will require New South Wales residents to essentially cease all travel into South Australia. As has been explained, the buffer arrangement, the cross-border community arrangement, will allow residents of Broken Hill and Wentworth to travel across the border and throughout South Australia, and it will also allow South Australians who live near the border to travel freely between Wentworth and Broken Hill and back into South Australia without any impediment. It's also important to stress that people seeking to travel to South Australia and avail themselves of the exemptions that are available must fill in a cross-border application online, so that can be processed and they can be received at the borders. We'll continue to maintain our border arrangements in place for New South Wales while we manage this particular situation and the concerns we have regarding the New South Wales community and the transmission of COVID-19. So I'm happy to take any questions before I hand over to Professor Spurrier.
Commissioner, what does this mean for your officers who are manning those borders full time? Are they back on work?
We several days ago reintroduced personnel to the borders at Yamba, Pinaroo and Oodlawirra, and I think also Wentworth, and we have police officers stationed there, and they'll continue to provide that border checking process for people coming in from New South Wales. This is essential so that we can actually identify people coming to the border, ensure that they are permitted to travel into South Australia under the directions as they will be as of midnight, and have an understanding of who is actually in South Australia, so we can do the contact tracing if that requirement arises.
At what point would you implement any stricter border restrictions with Victoria?
Look, we'll wait and see what happens with Victoria. The advice we've had so far is that the cases that they're currently dealing with are all linked and emanate from New South Wales. So on the basis of their contact tracing efforts and putting people into quarantine who are deemed to be close contacts, we'll just wait and see what happens. But at this stage, we're not considering any further changes with our borders for Victoria. But as we're seeing with New South Wales, it is a continuously changing situation that we have to monitor, and if there is a need to make those changes, then we'll do that as that requirement arises.
What's your message to people who try and breach any COVID restrictions?
Well, particularly with the border restrictions, we do have police officers on our borders. We have them at the airport. You will be greeted as you come into South Australia. You must be able to demonstrate that your claims for essential traveller status or as a returning South Australian resident or person who is relocating are genuine claims, and we'll be testing those claims as well. So you are required to upload evidence, and we'll be asking for that evidence at the border.